All right, we are live on YouTube right now, and this is an experience for us as we are trying to get things tested here. This is my man Casey Johnson helping me out here. So, YouTubers, welcome Casey aboard. I've been trying to help me figure out how to link Zoom through YouTube. So, we're doing that tonight, but we're going to start recording here in just a second. So, you guys are getting a little bit of behind the scenes action here on YouTube. So, let's get this thing rolling. What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, setting the pace. And the Indiana Pacers clinch the 4 seed the night before, and they decide to rest all their guys against the Orlando Magic on Appreciation Night. And the Orlando Magic, they take advantage of the Pacers, 129-115. Here to talk with me about this game and the dominant second quarter the Magic had is Casey Johnson. Casey, you were at the game last night. Talk to me a little bit more about what went down between the Pacers and the Magic.
Yes, Alex, it's fantastic to be here once again, just like the Pacers last night. Alex going all the way to the end of the bench and bringing me back for yet again. I mean, I was debating lying to myself and saying that there was no game of basketball played last night and just saying, let's go Pacers, and then like we would have been done with it. It was, it, you have to watch games like this in kind of a different way because I knew going in that probably what Rick was telling the guys was like, whatever you do, just don't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
None of this matters. Go out there, play as hard as you feel like you should, but like, don't get hurt. And you could definitely tell that there was a measured amount of effort that they were going to put into this game and that they weren't going to go over that amount of effort. So, like you kind of alluded to, second quarter, I mean, a few defensive bad looks and the Magic just catch fire. And once the Pacers got down, like, 15 and then now it's 20, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not risking my health to play hard enough to get back into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can convince yourself going into a game like this, oh, I'm going to go out there and get the dub because it's fan appreciation night. And I can convince myself that this game still matters. But when you're down 25 and then 35, you start to get really honest with yourself really quickly about how much this game actually matters. And so we ended up getting the young guys some run, and that's always fun in and of itself. One of the highlights of the year was nestled in there, but overall, it was weird to be in the crowd because when the Pacers start going down, 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 there's this frustration in the crowd of like, what is happening? And then it felt like the entire crowd all at once was like, oh, yeah, this doesn't matter at all. And then they just kind of started cheering for things when they did happen, talking amongst themselves. And it honestly felt more like being at a baseball game in some ways, because being at a baseball game is kind of a very low-key experience, except when like big hits happen and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of felt like that. It ended up being pretty relaxed.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I felt watching it back today in the morning. I was like, why am I putting myself through watching this for the next 2 hours? Like, what am I gonna take from this? I was excited maybe in the first half to kind of see how they looked. The second quarter just took me completely out of the game. I mean, I was just like, okay, this is not even exciting whatsoever. Because Johnny Furphy had that massive dunk. You talked about maybe one of the best plays of the season, and young Furf rose and dunked on Goga Batase. He was, Johnny Furphy was doing that for Greg Foster, if anybody remembers. Just getting his revenge right there. So it was a revenge tour for Greg Foster through Johnny Furphy. The basketball gods lifted him to the rafters, and he just tomahawked it down. I mean, I tell you what, Johnny Furphy is a fun player to watch. I understand that he's young and he's got a long way to go, but you can kind of just tell. And I think Rick Carlisle loves the work ethic that he has. the way that he plays hard. And I thought post game, like when Rick was really highlighting that he plays hard, he does everything he's asked to do. To me, it wasn't like he was directly calling anybody else out, but I think it was his way of saying, if you do these things, you'll
Hmm.
be rewarded.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know like the game, there's not a whole lot to take from it. It doesn't really matter. Pacers locked themselves into a playoff matchup with the Bucks, and I think that's probably the most important thing to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I think we can't go without giving Johnny Furphy a little bit of shine because he was really good in this game.
Yeah, sometimes watching Johnny Furphy when he's been put in this year has been kind of like watching a defensive version of, and also with results where there weren't results last year. But I remember when Rick used to like panic last resort, whatever you want to call it, and he would put in Doug because it's
Mhm.
like we need points right now. Doug does points. And he didn't do points last year, but whenever you really needed points, he put Doug in. When they really need a difference maker on defense and Rick's at the end of his rope, a lot of times he goes to Furf. And more often than not, Johnny is going to make you a couple of plays that are going to get you back into it. We look at the Washington Wizards game from just this week. And it's one of those where I was at that game and I was taking my friend who it was his first live basketball game. And the funny thing is, he just decided to get into basketball, came over to my house to watch the last Wizards game, watched the Pacers break every record in franchise history. Then he was like, dude, I can't wait to go to the next game against the Wizards. And then he got that. Um,
That might have been the ugliest game of the season, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that was just not fun at all until the end, and he ended up getting into it there at the end because it was kind of clutch. But there was somebody when they put in Furphy in that game who was sitting behind us, and he kind of remarked to the guy that he was sitting with, "All right, they officially don't care because they put in Johnny Furphy." And I'm sitting there, I'm a little offended on behalf of Furphy, but also like you could kind of tell that to an extent this guy hadn't watched Furphy play
Hmm.
because when Johnny comes in, chances are he's gonna somehow get like 5 steals in 3 minutes or something like that. He's got a nose for the ball. He always grabs rebounds. He always works the passing lanes and he knows where things are going. And the best thing about him is he's fearless, which we saw when he baptized Goga Batadze, where he people forget he grew up not even as much playing basketball, playing Aussie rules football, and he just does not care. Like there were a couple of times he got absolutely whacked going into the lane, takes this huge fall, and then he's like walking to the free throw line. He's like, "Ah, oh, man, that kind of hurt." Like he looks like a 12-year-old, but he's just tough as nails. And
Yeah.
he has a tendency, he's like a magnet for winning plays. And it's the type of guy that if you have to go to him, you actually feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I like that you're giving him a lot of props here. I think that it's been such a small sample size to really know how he'll fit in with the rotation, but I think he's doing the things that he needs to do well. And you just like the way like Rick has talked about size a lot, and I forget how tall Furphy is, but he looks like he's almost 6'10" out there. I mean,
Yeah.
massive guy. I think he's around 6'8", if I'm not mistaken, but still, like this
He's
was
listed as 6'8" on basketball reference.
okay, so 6'8". This was a guy that was projected to be a lottery pick, or at least an early,
Mhm.
like mid to early first round pick. He falls all the way to the second round, and I think part of it was because that sample size was so small at Kansas. But the Kansas Jayhawks last year were a much better team once they made Furphy a starter because originally he'd been coming off the bench. So that
Yeah.
was kind of his narrative in college, right? Young guy gets an opportunity. Bill Self, legendary coach at Kansas, decides to bring him in as a starter, and they start playing better. So I was a little bit flabbergasted during the draft, as it was 2 days, right? We saw a 2 day draft last year
Yeah.
that Johnny Furphy was still on the board. The Pacers not only drafted Johnny Furphy, they traded up with the San Antonio Spurs and gave them $6 million in
Yeah.
cash considerations to swap one spot to make sure they secured Furphy as a person that could play for them. So I'm just saying, Rick likes a lot of size.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what's going to happen with the future of this team in the next couple of years, but the fact that he was drafted as a 19-year-old, I think he might have just turned 20. Not sure when his birthday was, but I just you probably have it up on Basketball Reference if we're talking about that.
Yeah, I
So
got you.
yeah. Anyway,
He is 20 and 125 days. December
okay.
8th is his birthday.
So when's his birthday?
December 8th.
Okay, that's right. That's right. I kind of remember that, but it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Wow, it's already been 100 and some days since Christmas. Good grief.
2004, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the year my sister graduated high school, if that makes anybody feel a little bit old. So, um, but yeah, anyway, Johnny Furphy, like, you can't say enough good things about the way that he's been playing. I'll just say that, but I'm not sure what the future is going to hold. Like I was saying, that's kind of the point I'm getting at here. I just think that maybe in 2 to 3 years, if they have to make some moves with this roster,
Mhm.
like would not be surprised if he is a part of the rotation, and more so with the second unit than the first unit right now. But if they want to play big and they want to play him at the shooting guard, a 6'8" shooting guard like Johnny Furphy that does what he does, and he's really like one thing I like about his game is he's physical, like you mentioned with the Aussie football stuff. I think he's a pretty solid defender. Like that's one of the things I've seen from him. Yeah, he has his bad moments, but for a young player, the defensive, tendencies, the defensive fundamentals, they're there. And I think you can build off of that. And so, if you're envisioning a lineup of Furphy and Walker together, like we saw for a hot second against the Wizards at your two and your three, that's quite a bit of size out there. And if they're shooting the ball well, I mean, who knows how dangerous that group could be in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to think about Furphy, and you say it's such a small sample size. I think the small sample size in many situations actually kind of really works well for him because all he has to do is go out there and he's almost like a more skilled goon. Like he just goes out there and makes breakneck plays. You're getting 10 minutes at most, kid. This is your opportunity. And he just goes out there and throws caution to the wind. And being so good in such a small sample size is the type of thing that grows really, really well when your role starts to grow as well. If you do well with five and then you get to 10, and then eventually you become like a 15-minute guy, if that's all that he does for the next 10 years of his life, he could be a difference maker on a really good team as long as what he does continues to scale with the amount of opportunities that he gets later on in his career. And it's funny that you mentioned Jarris with him
Hmm.
because going into next year, if Furphy is in that next man up role, kind of like Jarris was this year, I know I heard Tony mention it on Locked On, like if we get him as like the guy who comes in when people are injured, Jarris kind of moves up into that second unit, then there are certainly going to be times when I feel more comfortable with Furphy in that role than I did some of the season with Jarris in that role. Um,
Hmm.
because Furphy doesn't exactly gamble in the same way that Jarris has had a tendency to, which by the way, he's getting so much better about, and I felt so good about his play here recently. But coming out and knowing that Furphy is going to find a way to make one difference making play when you need him. That's just about, I mean, there are starters in this league you can't ask that of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the way that he has improved as a player, the way that he's been given an opportunity, it feels like he's going to have to play in the playoffs.
Hmm.
And I think now that we know they're going to be playing the Bucks have had success against the Pacers this year, beating them 3 games to 1. Now, I will preface that by saying that there were some different versions of the Pacers that the Bucks saw. The first game in Milwaukee, Indiana did not have Nemhard Neesmith or Ben Shepherd, who at the time Ben Shepherd was playing much better basketball. The next time they played them, when the Pacers had a big lead going into the fourth, they go to this weird zone. Pacers end up losing that game because they just go ice cold. They can't get a shot off against Milwaukee's defense. And the Pacers also didn't have Neesmith in that one. Of course, we know the Halliburton game winner was game 3, and then game 4, where they were trying to really win that one to sure up that they got the home court advantage against the Bucks if that were to come down to it in the regular season. Pacers made a late run at it, but Milwaukee just outplayed them. So it's just one of those things where we really haven't seen these teams fully, loaded on both sides, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk all week long about Milwaukee and Indiana, so we don't have to talk about it too much today. But I just think that it's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be really hard to gauge what happened in the regular season and say, well, this is what I think is going to happen in the playoffs. I think there's things you can take away, but just too many different lineups. I mean, you're talking about the Bucks who made massive changes at the trade deadline from what we saw for the first couple of games to the second couple of games. So, it'll be interesting, but I just think Jarris is going to be very important for those series because of his size,
Hmm.
potentially a third person to guard Giannis if Neesmith and Siakam get in foul trouble, and his shot making if they play zone could be pivotal because Jarris Walker shooting close to 60% from three over the last month or so. So he's just been phenomenal, and I think that Rick Carlisle will have a tough decision to make because I know he does still probably doesn't fully trust him, but he's been giving him a little bit longer of a leash here the last couple of weeks, and I think he's really performed at a high level.
Yeah. And, he has. I think that there have been times throughout the course of the season where it's been a very, very difficult choice because when you talk about Shepard and Walker, they, in a way, have opposite skill sets in that Ben does all of the quiet things really, really well and isn't as proficient at the loud things. And Jarris has a tendency to do the loud things really, really well, the highlight stuff really, really well, and then a lot of the quiet stuff, a lot of the fundamentals is the stuff that has lapsed for him. And it's really difficult to put such a feast or famine player out on the court. And a lot of people say, well, he needs the reps there. And I think that that's a fair point. And a lot of people say, well, he needs the practice reps before he gets out there. And I think that's a fair point. Whatever the case may be, he has come out onto the court in these last couple of weeks and he's done the quiet things well.
Mm-hmm.
He, had his moments during the game last night, but of course, everybody did. Last night doesn't count. And he has had his fundamentals solid. He's managed to stay down on closeouts. He hasn't been caught in the air. He hasn't been doing the dumb fouls. And on top of it, like you said, it's a perfect time for a guy with that much size to be on an absolute heater. Which he's got the like I feel like he needs to put his jump shot on 1.5 speed for it to look real sometimes, but it just feels so casual and it just feels like he's just having fun and that it's going to go in, and his form is so interesting because his hand is always pushing the ball directly in the path of the basket. If he misses, a lot of the times it's long or short, but he's always right in line with the basket. He could be a very good shooter for a very long time. So everybody can say, well, hey, if he had gotten these minutes sooner, we would have had this sooner. And you're right, because that's a hypothetical and all hypotheticals are correct. But you could also say, hey, he needed this time to prepare for it. And, that's also correct because it's a hypothetical and all hypotheticals are correct. But no matter what, I think he's going to need to see the floor because he has length that they are just going to need inside.
Yeah, I mean it's a great point, and I think what you said too, like practice reps versus in game reps. I think everybody that's ever played basketball in their life will understand that unless you get in a game,
Hmm.
it's really hard to replicate that in practice. And even if you're scrimmaging and things like that, you can learn stuff. I mean, practice is very, very important. It gets you kind of like to get the details down and stuff like that. But until you experience it in a game, it's just totally different. And so, guys, Jared's been playing basketball for a long time. It's not like this
Yeah.
guy is new to basketball. NBA is a different level, a little bit more physical, quicker guys, more talented players he's playing against. Like that's basic stuff. But like we saw Jarris just absolutely crush in the G League when he would go down there. the level of talent in the G League is a significant drop off
Mhm.
from the level of talent in the NBA. And that's not a knock on the guys that are doing well in the G League and having success. And I'm not trying to, disregard anybody's success down there. But there's a reason why, like Mac McClung can like do some great stuff for the Orlando Magic G League team, but then he can't make the roster for the Magic's regular team. So it's just guys are talented, but they need opportunities. And I think that's what the fan base has been mostly upset about this season is the
Mhm.
fact that Jarris was not getting the fair opportunity. And Rick Carlisle would push back against that, to be honest with you. He was on the radio, talked about how he's played Jarris over 1,000 minutes this season. And the narrative that he's not playing him that much doesn't really feel fair. And so, I mean, he was pretty adamant, like, no, I don't really think that that's fair. And he's like, I know a lot of guys are very, very sensitive to when it comes to the two lottery picks because they want to see them have bigger opportunities than they've been having. But I think for Jarris, like sometimes those growing pains are helpful because
Yeah.
now it makes his hunger to want to be great better. Because right now it's like you screw up, you're gonna be pulled out of the rotation. Like that's just kind of where he's at in his career. So he's got to really, really, really be focused and ready because he got drafted to a team that ended up being a team that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think anybody expected that. So with the expectations rising for the Pacers, for them going out and making some significant trades to get Siakam and Toppin, last offseason and last season, like it's really hard for a young guy like that to crack the rotation, especially when at the small forward spot you got Neesmith, Mathurin, Shepard, like guys that played last year, got that opportunity and proved themselves. And Shepard obviously was that guy for last year, but Mathurin and Neesmith had been doing the last couple of years. Where does he fit in? So I'm glad Rick is finding a way for him to fit in, and
Yeah.
I'm excited for his future. I know that we're excited for Furphy's future as well, but Jarris, I mean, I said on this podcast before, I think he could really be a wild card X factor for this team. Just I think he might be the most important young player they have because of everything he brings to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of the thing too where you also have to keep in mind he's so young. Like, he's so young. And I think some of the issue sometimes when he was coming out there could have been his youth. I felt like there were moments that like the moments had weight on them. The moments had gravity, but he wasn't necessarily playing with that gravity. And there's good to that and there's bad to that. But there were just moments when he seemed just like a touch too casual for the situation. Could it have benefited him being a young guy like that to get yanked a few times after some really bad turnovers to be like, hey, this is like you said, the NBA is different, right? And so when you can't just make costly plays like that and we're trying to build good habits and maybe consequences is the way that he as a human being builds those habits as well, you just never know. But no matter what has happened up until this point in his career, it looks like the version of Jarris that we're getting right now is the version that everybody hoped that they drafted. And so, my hope, at least as a guy who's tired of scrolling Twitter, is that hopefully
Let
he
me
can
stop you there real
do
quick.
well.
If you're tired of scrolling Twitter,
See, there you go. Softball right down the plate. Hit it out the
chat
park.
BCC, ladies and gentlemen, join the Setting the Pace
Ah,
live group chat, chat BCC. You can get it on any kind of platform you have, Android, Apple, wherever. There's a link on my page. And look, if you haven't already heard, I'm giving away 2 free tickets to game 2 in the playoffs. Haven't put a prompt out for what you got to do to win, but make sure you're following me on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA so you'll be aware for that. But Casey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
oh no, dude! I was sitting here praying to the Lord above that you would take the bait that I just gave you.
I mean, no wink, no nothing, no heads up. I'm over here looking in the comments. We got people chatting with us live, so this is all new for me. I'm trying to respond to the live comments. I'm trying to listen to you. Bachi's texting me. I can only do so much. I'm a basic guy. Getting too much going on. I'm just a little bit slow. But anyway, chat BCC, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be there live for every game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So hopefully, moving forward, whatever has happened to him up until this point, we can just count it as a benefit, and he can be a great player for years to come.
Absolutely. So All right, for this game, I really don't think I have anything else to really add. Matherin played 40 minutes. My biggest concern is, just the fact that he played 40 minutes. The good news is heading into Sunday night's or Sunday afternoon's game at 1 o'clock, the matinee against the Cleveland Cavaliers to end the year, the Pacers have decided that Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton are out and Ben Shepherd is out, but nobody else is listed on the injury report as out. So, my question to you, Casey, the
Mm.
Pacers can either beat this Cavs team in a meaningless game and get 50 wins, or they could potentially lose it and give themselves a better draft position, maybe get closer to the early 20s instead of the mid 20s. What is more appealing to you?
What is appealing to me is first and foremost everybody getting through this healthy.
That
And
that is number one priority right there.
last night, when I was at that game, I saw a level of play that was a really interesting in between. Everybody was pushing while it was competitive, but nobody was jeopardizing their health. They were staying loose, but they weren't overworking their bodies. What I say is this: come into the game prepared to take advantage of an undermanned Cavs team. Go into the game with the intention and with the purpose of actually getting the win. And see if you can do that at 75% effort. Make sure that if somebody is closing out on you, you jump out of the way as quickly as possible. And if you get down by greater than 14 points, play pickup basketball for the rest of the night. Just cut it. Because we're legitimately in a situation where either outcome has its advantages and its disadvantages.
What's the advantage of getting to 50 wins?
You can say that you had 50 wins.
Is that an advantage? What advantage does that give you?
You know, Alex, you can say you had 50 wins for the
I will
first
say this
time.
for my OCD, right? Like 49 and 33 sounds a lot worse than 50 and 32.
I think it is just, and I'm mostly on your side here, but I will give respect to the fact that seeing the number of wins start with a 5
I agree.
feels so good for the team and feels so good for the fans, especially since the last team that did that was the GQ team, right?
Come on now.
And it we as Pacers fans are for the most part used to being pretty successful, but there's also always that side of when is the other shoe going to drop. And
Yeah.
I think reaching a milestone like 50 could be really good for that locker room, could be moving forward. Perhaps the Simon family is willing to move into the tax for a
Hey,
50
if
win.
this meaningless game gets the
That's
Simons
what
to
I'm
pay the
saying, dude.
tax
But here's the thing,
from
and
your
we were
lips to
talking
God's
about
ears.
this. We were talking about this before we went live. People, nothing makes any sense. Nothing makes any sense. You're trying to figure out how to broadcast your Zoom on YouTube. Guess what, folks? It doesn't make any sense. All right. You're trying to figure out how to get through life. It doesn't make any sense. Can a billionaire decide to spend a little bit extra of his billions of dollars because we got to 50 wins rather than 49? That doesn't make any sense, which means it's probably somewhere on the list of probabilities.
Okay, well let's just put it out this way. And I love the Simon family. I love the way that they've run this organization. It's a class act organization. There are some old ways that I don't love they stick to, but I respect it. I would much rather have this type of ownership than what we've seen from
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Dumont in Dallas, what we've seen from Matt Ishbia in Phoenix. So while you might be upset that they might not pay the tax and they might trade one of your favorite players, they're still going to put out a competitive basketball team and they're not going to hold themselves, you know, to where they're stuck and they can't get out. And that's where these other
Yeah.
two franchises are kind of at. I mean, I guess the Mavericks have a little bit more wiggle room, but like Phoenix They do an all in trade. They just keep making all these stupid trades. They can't trade Bradley Beal. There's been real conversations about them potentially waiving him. So it's just a weird dynamic there. And I think you just got to be careful what you wish for because I get it. There's got to be a certain number that they got to feel comfortable with. And if they feel like this team is able to win a championship, I actually do believe they will spend the money.
Yeah.
However, it just has been a long time since we've seen it. So I think with Tyrese Halliburton as the head of the snake, I think with Steve Simon kind of getting more involved with his dad Herb, I think there could be more incentive potentially to try and build a team or at least keep a team together that's got a chance because we always see teams shake it up. Like what if Jalen Brown gets unhappy in Boston the next couple of years? Does he leave? How long will this Cavs team stay together and be great like they were this year? Like could the Pacers just keep ascending because they're so young? And could they eventually, kind of like Reggie's Pacers, get to that point where they make the finals? Like I'm not saying it's impossible. They might need to make a few trades here and there, but I could see Herb Simon. He's an older guy wanting to pay the tax the older he gets, knowing that he might not be able to see a championship in his lifetime with the NBA Pacers. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I'm hopeful that the Pacers just like you said, the most important thing, they get out of the game healthy, and it's a homecoming for Enrique Freeman. Maybe
Yes.
give Enrique the start, let him play like 25 minutes. Let Quentin Jackson go out there and play about 25 minutes with Ray J. Dennis and Johnny Furphy and that kind of group that you don't really anticipate playing much in the playoffs. And, you know, if you want to play some of the guys, like the first half, just to kind of get some run in, have no problem with that since they're not going to play till probably next Saturday or Sunday. So it's just, you got to be smart about it.
Mm.
This organization, they know what they're doing. I'm not worried about that. Now, if Miles Turner twists his ankle in this game because he played, yeah, I'm not going to be happy about that. But it is what it is. They have a whole week to recover if it's a small injury. So that's the good news. But the bad news is, do guys get stiff if they sit for too long before they play their next game? So that could also be in the back of their mind. But like you said, injuries are the most important, and we'll see who plays and how much they actually play. But I'm just hoping that this game gets over in about 2 hours. We don't have to spend 3 hours watching a bunch
Yeah.
of reviews and fouls and stupidity. And I hope Enrique Freeman gets a double double in his return home against the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, we're having as much fun with trying to figure out what they should do tomorrow as we can because ultimately this is content. But like it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter all that much one way or the other. We'll see what happens. We had a player in the association last night change out of his uniform at halftime. That's where we're at in the season. Let's all just, look toward the playoffs because ultimately the Pacers are a classy organization in ways that I was telling somebody this earlier the year. It's crazy the number of things that the Pacers do that you would not think was uncommon, and yet they do, right? Where like you hear, oh my goodness, they've got like really good catering for us or whatever, and it's like they didn't where you came from. Oh, I really respect this front office because they let you know if a trade is coming up. And to us it's like, well, why would you not tell somebody if a trade is coming up? Like they just do things the human way in so many situations. How many like teams have front office people just like replying to fans on Twitter in a
Right.
fun way? You know,
I know.
like Steven Simon's like the coolest Twitter follow at this point
I
because
know.
he was losing
He's the
it over
biggest
the
Pacer
game
fan
winner.
on Twitter.
He's
He really
awesome.
he
And
is.
like ultimately so many things in life aren't about the destination, they're about the ride. And we all want to get to the point where this team is winning us a championship, but let's not forget how freaking fun it is to be a fan of this team and to be able to be a fan of not just the Pacers and not just the Fever, but Pacer Sports and Entertainment as a company is just a beautifully run company from the ground up. And so ultimately, we don't have all that much to complain about, really.
Casey, how much are they paying you over there to promote the PSNE over here on the podcast?
Oh, dude, I just paid them more money recently to renew my season tickets.
There you
So
go.
I just
Who is
like
your
them.
is Dennis still your season ticket
Yeah,
rep?
yeah, dude, I love
Shout
Dennis.
out Dennis,
Yeah,
our guy, getting married soon. So
yeah,
exciting
man.
times ahead for Dennis. But Casey, that's gonna wrap it up for today's episode. Obviously, not too much to recap here at the game. Not a lot of takeaways. Obviously, some really bad defense here and there throughout the game. Pacers offense really struggled in that second quarter. But you know, good opportunity for guys like Tony Bradley to get some more minutes to kind of prove their worth in the NBA. Because I would be uh, very surprised if he made the Pacers roster next season, but good for him to get some of these minutes here to kind of showcase what he can do. Very long, very big body, very good rebounder. So
Yeah,
hopefully another team will give him an opportunity. But so many guys, that are on two-way contracts. Eventually, those will run out for the Pacers, so they got to get picked up somewhere else. So just any opportunity they can get to kind of showcase themselves outside of playing in the G League and things like that will be big. So Casey, with that being said, thank you so much for coming on, helping me get this set up, and Pacer Nation, you know how we end this thing here. We got a Facci "Let's Go Pacers" saved that you'll hear on the audio side, but for our live YouTube watchers here, all 11 of you guys, Casey, if you're hoping the Pacers end the season fully healthy and ready for the playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks, hit me with those three words.
and everybody type as well. Let's go Pacers.